What is up, boys and girls? Undertaker here, and now I'm back with another audio video for you today. I know I don't do as many audio videos as I used to on this channel, but I've got one for you today, and as the title says, Top 10 Undertaker matches that never happened. So just to briefly explain what's gonna be. So with the Undertaker kind of retiring Survivor Series, Undertaker's final farewell. Now the big question is, will this be the Undertaker's last ever match? I don't know. I'd like to think so, and I probably do think it probably is. But this wrestler, you never know. Vince might tempt him out retirement for one big payday or something like that. So we never know. Maybe it's his last match, maybe it's not. Who knows? Um, but if it is, it puts a bow on a great 30-year career in the WWE. And so what I'm going to do, because I was thinking, what can I do for The Undertaker? Could I do a career retrospective? That's just going to take a lot of time and effort, and to be honest, We Are Pro Wrestling did an outstanding job on his series earlier this year. And let's just be honest, I'm not going to top that. I'm just not. I mean, because he's a better YouTuber than me. He can do this sort of thing better than I can. Not going to top that. Gonna do top Undertaker matches. Already done stuff like that in the past. I've reviewed every single pay-per-view that he's been on, so I can't really do anything more there. So what I've decided to do, look back at his career and talk about the Undertaker matches that never happened. What would have been the best Undertaker matches to happen? And I think my boy Diesel used to do videos like this years ago, but he did it with various wrestlers. And I am open to doing this for different wrestlers if it's successful, and if people want to see it, I might do that down the line. But for now, I'm just committing to doing this one of The Undertaker. So we're going to talk about people he could have wrestled, but we're also going to talk about matches that, yeah, technically did happen, but we're going to change the circumstances. You'll know what I mean when I get to it, because it is one match in particular that I'm going to have to bend the rules a little bit just to get in. Now, it's going to be part matches that realistically could have happened, and in some parts we're going to have to put our fantasy hat on here. But let's just get to it. Coming in at number 10, The Undertaker versus Abyss. Now, there was a few names I considered for the final spot. One of those names was Undertaker versus current version of Drew McIntyre, because yes, Undertaker did wrestle Drew McIntyre back in 2010, but the Drew McIntyre of then is a completely different Drew McIntyre now. Then I also considered The Undertaker versus Braun Strowman. But I was looking at another guy that was around when The Undertaker was around, but they were never in the same company at the same time. And that is the Monster Abyss. Now let's face it, Undertaker versus big guys over the years has had very mixed results. For every Kane or Diesel or Batista, there's been a Giant Gonzalez, a King Kong Bundy, a Kamala, a King Mabel. So let's face it, the facts are Undertaker versus other big guys is often not a good match. I think for it to work, it has to be another big guy that can wrestle and really move like The Undertaker does. And for me, back in the 2000s, there was a guy who would have been a perfect opponent for The Undertaker. But that guy never wrestled for the WWE, and that guy is named Abyss. So in the 2000s, Abyss was pretty awesome. One of TNA's best homegrown talents, and especially in that time, there was a lot of smaller guys in TNA, so someone being Abyss's size and having the ability that he did, he really stood out. And of course, with the mask gimmick, the monster who doesn't talk very much, there's a character that would have fit in to face someone like The Undertaker and Kane as well. Now, there's a big rumor story out there that this was actually nailed on. That one year, if this was actually nailed on to go to WWE, it was either 2005 or 2006, or possibly even 2007. But it was one of those years where WWE reached out to Abyss, they agreed the deal, it was going to happen. Then at the last minute, Abyss pulled out, decided to stay in TNA, and you just got to look back now and think, does he regret that? Because I think, like, of all the TNA original talent, a bit. Remember at that time, WWE weren't really pushing talent from other promotions. They usually prefer to get their own talent and train them in developmental and bring them up. Um, like, for example, 10, 12 years ago, AJ Styles would never have been as successful in WWE as he is now. Um, but of all those guys, you'd think Abyss had the best chance to make it. Because let's face it, WWE is always, to an extent, it's always going to be a big man's game. I mean, yeah, I know the game's changed a lot over the years. But if a big guy comes along with ability, he's going to get pushed to the top. That's just the way it is. And yeah, so I think for a great time frame for this to happen, I think for me the perfect time would have been 2006. You could say 2005, but I feel like the Undertaker Orton feud was the right way to go at that time. But when you look at 2006, Undertaker's WrestleMania opponent that year was Mark Henry in a casket match. And that match was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it was definitely one of the less memorable streak matches towards the end of his run. Feel like Mark Henry was still a few years of really breaking out and becoming Paul the Pain Mark Henry. And then after that, he had the long feud of the Great Khali, which, oh god. So I feel like Abyss comes into WWE 2006. You could either have him have the match at WrestleMania 22, or it could basically replace Great Khali and have the Undertaker's post WrestleMania 22 feud. So maybe you start the feud off after WrestleMania 22, then you can conclude the feud at SummerSlam. So obviously, they could have a series of matches which could culminate in like a last man standing match or something at SummerSlam. So that was one of the Abyss's strong points. Hardcore wrestling, and I think the Undertaker could do that if he wanted to. Yeah, I think this will be a really, really sweet feud. And I think it's just a shame we never got it. So for number 10, Undertaker versus Abyss. Coming in number 9, The Undertaker versus Daniel Bryan. I feel like with him wrestling AJ Styles at WrestleMania this year, that was one of the last guys the Undertaker ticked off his list of guys he could have wrestled. But for me, of all the guys on the main roster right now that the Undertaker could have wrestled, there's maybe 2 or 3 I would go for. I mean, I think Seth Rollins could have been an option. Like I said, the current version Drew McIntyre would have been a great option. But for me, the one guy, the current roster, I would really want to see the Undertaker face was Daniel Bryan. Now, the only time these two guys worked together was in a tag team match, if you remember. Back in 2013 on that Raw from London, it was the Brothers of Destruction and The Undertaker versus The Shield. And I always thought they should have saved that match for Extreme Rules, but they did it on Raw. But I thought that match was great. It's probably, yeah, that's probably one of my favourite Shield matches, in fairness. Just to see Undertaker, Kane and Daniel Bryan work, I thought that was really, really sweet. Then, of course, because Daniel Bryan emerged at the time where The Undertaker was winding his career down. So Bryan came into WWE in 2010. And of course, that was one of the last times The Undertaker worked a schedule. It wasn't just WrestleMania. So he did the build up to WrestleMania 26. And then he worked that program with Kane in the autumn of 2010. And then after that, he pretty much, give or take a couple of years, the odd one, he just pretty much only worked WrestleMania after that. Now, I don't know how many people in the IWC remember this, but there was a story going around in the build-up to WrestleMania 30. The Undertaker actually, like that, I'm starting to stutter there. Undertaker actually asked to work with Daniel Bryan, and who knows how that would have went out. My God, how different things could have been there if the Undertaker worked Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30. But and I do actually think this probably would have been nailed on to happen if Daniel Bryan wasn't retired for essentially for 3 years, officially for 2. But let's face it, he didn't wrestle from 2015 to 2018. So you got to think in one of those. See if Daniel Bryan was fit, could that have been a match at WrestleMania 32? But let's face it, that Undertaker Shane match was fine. But for me, it was just fine. It wasn't really standout or anything like that. It wasn't a brilliant match or anything like that. Just feel like Bryan and The Undertaker could have done something good. And I think one of the biggest mistakes WWE made of The Undertaker for the last 2 or 3 years of his career is he was wrestling these matches with guys his own age. So like Triple H, Brothers of Destruction versus DX, Goldberg. And I think the problem there was, because obviously, let's be honest, Undertaker was pretty fucked for the last few years of his career, wasn't he? Let's be fair about that. I mean, loved the guy, but Undertaker was not in good shape for the last few years of his career. And I think what you need to do in that situation is to put him in there with someone younger, someone smaller than him that can take a lot of big bumps and make him look good. So, and then obviously, then again, he was wrestling. Obviously, he wrestled someone like Rusev and that. But I think the problem was after that he couldn't do many of his power moves anymore, and that was obviously a problem. And I feel like if him and AJ actually had the match they were going to have in the Raymond James Stadium, it would have been a very good match. Would it have been a great match or anything like that? I don't know. But I do think it would have been at least very good. Now, of course, obviously, people are going to talk about the size difference, but if you look at The Undertaker's history, he's had some of his best matches with smaller men, notably Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in particular, and then obviously Kurt Angle in later years, and let's face it, later on in his career. Probably had his last classic match with CM Punk at WrestleMania 29, so why couldn't he have had a great match with Daniel Bryan? I mean, they could have told a great story of, yeah, The Undertaker's bigger and he's got the striking ability, but what if Daniel Bryan gets him down at the mat? I mean, if Bryan can get The Undertaker down the mat, then Undertaker's not 6'10" when he's down on the floor, is he? Him and Bryan are the same size, so he could have did that where looked like Bret Hart used to. Bryan could go after The Undertaker's legs and knees, take them out, wrestle him on the mat, really do some damage to The Undertaker. But then The Undertaker could fight back, get the win. Yeah, I feel like Daniel Bryan and The Undertaker would have had some pretty damn good chemistry. I feel like this just would have worked really well together. And I feel like Undertaker would have been really happy to work with someone like Bryan, who could bring the best out of him at that late stage in his career. So yeah, I think this is definitely one of the matches that we missed out on in The Undertaker's career. And it's just a shame it never happened, really. Coming at number 8, we've gone from wrestling a technical wrestler to an old-fashioned Texas brawler, and that is Stan motherfucking Hansen. Now, this match would have been a war. This would have been a battle, and yeah, I just feel like, obviously we're putting our fantasy hats on a little bit here because the generations kind of lapped us. Most of Hansen's best work was in the 70s and the 80s, and quite a bit of the 90s, and then Undertaker didn't really become great in the ring until the late 90s, and then had a wicked resurgence in the 2000s. So, but I just feel like two Texas guys, two brawlers, two badass motherfuckers. Stan Hansen. I like going back watching Stan Hansen's work. I'm going to admit, haven't seen as much of his work as I would have liked to. I mean, I've probably been a bit lazy on that score. But if you just want to see a good old-fashioned Texas brawler, you could definitely watch some of Hansen's classic New Japan work. And obviously his stuff in the WWF in the 70s as well. Like his matches with Bruno and Bob Backlund and people like that. Then some of his AWA stuff against like Nick Bockwinkel and Rick Martel. Stan Hansen was great. Obviously kind of disappointing he never had a WWF run back in the golden era of WWF. That would have been interesting. So, what would be the best time to do this? I mean, but I think doing it from pure fantasy, I think maybe a 97, 98 Undertaker versus a mid-80s Stan Hansen back when he was kicking ass in Japan and stuff like that. All Japan and New Japan and all that sort of stuff. I think that would have been an awesome time to do it. But I think you could have done this one of two ways if you want to do it in real life. I mean, let's say Stan Hansen comes into WWE in like 94, 95. I mean, at that point, yeah, he probably wasn't quite in his prime anymore. But I think he probably still had enough in the tank to have a little decent 6 month run in the WWF. Could have been maybe someone like Ted DiBiase or Jim Cornette could have brought him in to fight the Undertaker. Because at the time, I think that would have helped change the Undertaker style of wrestling, bring out a different style in the Undertaker. Or alternatively, what if? So if you remember in 1990, the WWF and All Japan and then New Japan as well had this combined show in April 13th of 1990 in the Tokyo Dome. I'm talking about the one where Hulk Hogan wrestled Stan Hansen and Macho Man wrestled Tenryu and Demolition wrestled Andre the Giant and Giant Baba. That one, I've done that one on my channel before. So what if in, say, 1994, yeah, let's go 93 or 94, WWF and All Japan once again pulled the resources together to have a combined show in the Tokyo Dome. And then one of the big matches was The Undertaker versus Stan Hansen. And then what if The Undertaker completely changed his style to be more like he was in 96, 97, or even 2007 or 2008, a more faster paced, more faster moving, aggressive style. And so what if the Undertaker went there and had a Japanese style badass brawl Stan Hansen in the Tokyo Dome? I think this would have been excellent. Dave Meltzer would have given 6 stars, maybe 6.5 stars, but if it happened in the States, it might only be 4.25 stars. But yeah, I just think like these two would work so well together. I think Hansen would really challenge the Undertaker and bring out the aggressiveness in him. Now, I did also consider Bruiser Brody for this one as well, because I think that would have been pretty awesome. I also considered Terry Funk as well. So, but I went for Stan Hansen because I just feel like if you saw the brawls Hansen had with Vader back in the late 80s, early 90s, I feel like him and even the match with Hogan, in 90, that was one of Hogan's best matches ever. And I just feel like he could have done something very similar for the Undertaker here as well. So yeah, Hansen versus the Undertaker for number 8. Coming in number 7, and we'll continue with the Japanese theme with a Japanese legend, and that is the Undertaker versus Great Muta. I think as far as characters go, I think hypothetically a feud between these two would have been wacky as hell, and it would have fit perfectly in the new generation WWF era, where let's face it, that era was a lot more cartoony, and you could get away with a lot more shit than you could have done years later. I mean, look at some of the shit the Undertaker did around this time. See if you try to do that in the Attitude Era or the 2000s, a lot of it would have been absolutely laughed at. Like, some of the stuff he did of Yokozuna and dying and going to heaven and all that crap. And then obviously the stuff with the fake Undertaker. That stuff flew back then, but do some of that weird shit in the Attitude Era and then the 2000s. It would have been like, what the hell is this? And obviously at the time, the Undertaker was having a lot of power matches with a lot of guys that just either weren't up to his level, or just Undertaker couldn't really work with them. So I say, what if? And I know back then, I think the size issue was still a thing, and I think in a million years Vince would have never done this because he would have saw Muta and thought, nah, he's too small, he probably couldn't work with the Undertaker. So what if the Great Muta had a run in WWF in, let's say, 1994 till about 1996? Just some of the stuff he could have done. I mean, feuding with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels alone, that would have got amazing matches out of him. But what if he came in his prime, his full Great Muta persona, with the face paint and the mysterious stuff and all that, and they had a big feud of the Undertaker. Now, Great Muta, of course, has had experience in mainstream American wrestling before, because when he was on Excursion, he had a run in WCW in 1989, and a great run at that, in fairness. I mean, you look at some of those Muta Sting matches, holy fuck, they were good. And I feel like Muta made a great opponent for Sting at the time. Then, of course, he even main evented Halloween Havoc 89 when he teamed with Terry Funk to face Sting and Ric Flair. And then, he's in the Iron Man tournament, Starrcade 89, lost every single match. But then every now and then he'd show up on WCW, maybe a pay-per-view match, notably against Barry Windham at Super Brawl 3, then against Steve Austin at Spring Stampede 1994. Then I think he won one of the Battle Bowls in '93, I believe it was. I'm pretty sure that's right. Um, so Muta in mainstream wrestling could work. I mean, in fairness, I think to do this, you do need to have a manager. So let's face it. So look at that time frame. I think Jim Cornette would have been the ideal candidate, wouldn't he? Say Jim Cornette brings in the Great Muta to take down the Undertaker. So obviously Muta doesn't have to talk. Cornette can do all the talking for him. Um, yeah, and I just feel like you've got these two mysterious guys, these two great personas. You could have had a pretty good match. I mean, Undertaker could have changed his style a little bit early if he's wrestling someone like Muta. Um, there wasn't really until 1996 when the Undertaker started getting away from the slow, stalking Undertaker type and started working a bit more of a fast-paced, exciting style. Um, I think that started when he wrestled Bret Hart at the Royal Rumble, and then Diesel WrestleMania match, and then the Mankind series. Yeah, and then obviously things just improved in the ring from after that. But I think that this could have been one of his first really, really good matches in the WWF. I mean, they could have maybe done this for I mean, maybe so after he came back, and maybe instead of doing the Yokozuna casket match, you could have did a feud with Great Muta. Then that could have ended, and then maybe you could have revisited the feud in 1995. Maybe the storyline could have culminated at WrestleMania 11. Just hypothetically, I mean, let's face it, some of the stuff Undertaker did during this period is awful. I mean, let's say that King Kong Bundy match was shit. One of the probably the second worst street match ever, beside the Giants Gonzalez match. But if you do Taker versus Muta, that would have been pretty excellent, to be honest. I mean, this is a match I would have absolutely loved to have seen, and it's just a shame we didn't get it. Coming in number 6, and this is going to be one of the instances where I bend the rules just a little bit, and that is a proper feud and a big pay-per-view showdown of Chris Jericho. So yes, let's get this out of the way. Undertaker and Chris Jericho have wrestled before. They had but the weird thing is it took them 10 years to do this match. So Chris Jericho debuted in 1999, but they never had the first match until 2009. And I believe they had a match in a house show, but the first televised match was from Raw in England in November of 2009. Not sure, I think maybe it was Manchester, but I'm not 100% sure which the city was. But it definitely happened on that show, and then of course, I think they had another match in early 2010 for on SmackDown as well. And then the only time they really did something on pay-per-view was Survivor Series 2009, when it was Undertaker versus Chris Jericho versus The Big Show for the World Heavyweight title. But a long proper program between these two guys always eluded them, and for whatever reason never happened. And it's just a shame. Now, could this have been a WrestleMania match between the two at some point? Maybe, but doesn't necessarily have to be WrestleMania, but I just feel like Jericho would have been a great Undertaker opponent. I mean, Chris Jericho could have carried the feud on the microphone. I mean, like I said before, Undertaker's had a lot of his best matches with guys Jericho's size, like Bret and Shawn and Kurt Angle, and then obviously people like CM Punk and all that sort of thing. So why wouldn't this have been an awesome match? I think, what would be the best people to do it? I mean, you look at Chris Jericho's early WWE run, I think, nah, probably not, because I mean, they were both baby faces for a long time, and then ironically, they both turned heel around the same period in late 2001, so if Undertaker had stayed face just a little bit longer, maybe they could have done it there, but I think at the time, Undertaker turning heel at the end of 2001 was the right call, and then the brand split happens, and then for years, Chris Jericho was on Raw, The Undertaker was on SmackDown. Because it started off Taker on Raw, Jericho on SmackDown, didn't it? Then Jericho went Raw in July, but at the time, The Undertaker was feuding with the Un-Americans, and Chris Jericho was feuding with Ric Flair. Who knows? Maybe that could happen at SummerSlam 2002. Who knows? But then after SummerSlam, The Undertaker goes to SmackDown, and then Chris Jericho stayed on Raw for many years, and then obviously WrestleMania matches happen. So WrestleMania 19, Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels, that was obviously the match. Then the whole story of Undertaker coming back to face Kane at WrestleMania 20. that was the right story. And I think 21, I think Randy Orton needed that feud more than Chris Jericho did. And of course Jericho leaves in 05, comes back in 07, but he goes back to Raw, so once again, Undertaker and Chris Jericho on separate brands. And then 2009 is when Chris Jericho was drafted to SmackDown. I think you look at this time period where I think when that 2008 heel turn, Chris Jericho being the honest man guy during the feud with Shawn Michaels. I've said it once, I've said it before. For me, that's the greatest version of Chris Jericho of all time. In my opinion, absolutely. So for me, so I think round after SummerSlam, that's when you could have started a Chris Jericho Undertaker rivalry. So that match is Survivor Series. I just feel that match would have been so much better if it was the first time meeting between Chris Jericho and the Undertaker. Much like the Big Show, I just feel like Chris Jericho versus the Undertaker would have been so much better than this. Not that that match was a bad match, and the ironic thing is I'm going to be posting that review later on today. But yeah, like I say, if that was the first ever meeting between Chris Jericho and The Undertaker on pay-per-view, because I think it's just a shame we only got it twice on SmackDown, and then maybe you could have kept the feud going. And what if the feud culminated at Royal Rumble 2010 in some kind of gimmick match or something like that? So you could have got 2 or 3 pay-per-views out of this over the years. And here's an ironic one. This was actually supposed to happen in Saudi Arabia, if you remember the Greatest Royal Rumble. That casket match of Undertaker Rusev was originally Undertaker versus Chris Jericho, and that got changed to Rusev. So how that match would have been? To be honest, probably not that great, because let's face it, Undertaker was pretty done in by then. I just don't think a 47, 48-year-old Chris Jericho would have been the right guy to get a really good match out of him. So I think if you do this in like 2009 into 2010, maybe do it over 2 or 3 pay-per-views. I think there's just a lot of money left on the table by not doing a Chris Jericho Undertaker rivalry at some point. I mean, it's one of those really disappointing ones that never happened. And just a shame, really. It would have been pretty awesome. Now, coming at number 5, this will be an iconic battle. The Undertaker versus Andre the Giant. I mean, as far as big names in history, Andre is one of the very few the Undertaker has not wrestled. I mean, also obviously spanned so many generations. He's wrestled everyone from Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, to Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, to Steve Austin and The Rock, to Brock Lesnar, Batista, John Cena. Then, of course, recently someone like AJ Styles and Roman Reigns. So Undertaker's seen a lot of people go, a lot of people come. But one guy he never crossed paths with was Andre the Giant. Now, obviously, I think for this one, this is going to have to more delve into fantasy than reality, because the reality is that these two guys just missed each other. The Andre's prime, of course, was 70s and the 80s. Then by the time the Undertaker got into WWE in 1990, Andre had already wrestled his last match for the company. Then, of course, Andre would pass away in 1993. So it never happened. Now, this is inspired. I don't know how many people saw this, but a couple of years ago, Undertaker was doing an interview, and he talked about Andre the Giant, and he talked about a time where Andre the Giant came up with him and told him that he had a special idea in mind for them, but he wasn't going to tell him what it was. And one day he's going to try and make it happen. So this must have been 1991 when Undertaker was coming up as a big heel. So looked like even then Andre saw what the Undertaker was going to be, and thinking, oh, could I have one last match with this guy? So, and that fascinates me, because like Undertaker said, that Andre never told him what his big plan was. So that's just so intriguing, isn't it? What could Andre have been planning in his head for him and the Undertaker? Now, to do this in fantasy, I think doing this as fantasy would be obviously way much better than it would in reality. So you could say maybe early 80s Andre versus late 90s Undertaker. The match wouldn't have been great, but I just feel like the spectacle of these two iconic characters facing off one-on-one for the first time ever. I mean, because I think there's so much similarities between these two, because Thinking Andre's day, Andre was what the Undertaker was. That locker room leader, that just iconic star that's respected by everyone. I mean, the guy that was built up to be the ultimate badass motherfucker. I mean, obviously guys like Hogan and before that Bruno were the star, but Andre was the most respected guy in the company. The guy that everyone was really the measuring stick as far as iconic figures were. Then I think down the line, the Undertaker took over that role from Andre and became the closest thing the WWE had to Andre in that special attraction type guy. I think they were both great special attractions, and then you've got these two monsters, these two badass motherfuckers, facing each other one on one in a big fight. I mean, I've seen some of Andre's Japan work, and Andre could actually work back in the day before, like obviously all of his issues got to him. His back and his knees and all that. And by the time most fans seen Andre in the late 80s, he was pretty much fucked physically and all that. Shot physically, couldn't really do much. But when Andre was younger, I think him and Undertaker could have had a badass match. I really, really do. Now, what's the only time this could have happened in reality? I mean, so what if? Small what if. So, because I think if you watch WWF in 1991, it's pretty obvious Andre the Giant tried to make a comeback that year. I think what a lot of people don't know is Andre was originally advertised for the 1991 Royal Rumble. I mean, if you Google it on Google Andre the Giant Royal Rumble 1991, you'll even see Andre cutting a promo about it. So, at one time or another, Andre was penciled in to work the 1991 Royal Rumble. But obviously, I think what happened is he just wasn't physically up to it. And then there was a storyline in about May or June of 1991 where him and Jake were having a feud of Earthquake and Typhoon. And I think originally, before Jake turned heel, it was going to be Andre the Giant and Jake the Snake Roberts versus the Natural Disasters for SummerSlam 91. But again, Andre wasn't physically up to it. So what if Andre got himself up into a decent enough shape? Obviously, I think having Andre in great shape was probably out of the question by that time. So what if Andre got into reasonably enough shape that him and Undertaker could have had a feud in early 1991, and that could have culminated into a WrestleMania 7 match between the legendary Andre the Giant and the young upstart The Undertaker? And what if Undertaker's first WrestleMania match and first win in the WrestleMania streak was against Andre the Giant instead of Superfly Jimmy Snuka? I mean, it's great as a star Jimmy Snuka was in the past. By 1991, he was obviously just a utility veteran and there to put over The Undertaker. I mean, so what if? It would have been a spectacle. I mean, yeah, probably the match probably wouldn't not have been good at all. I mean, because at the time Undertaker it was all about developing the character and doing the slow, brooding, stalking Undertaker type thing. And Andre probably wouldn't have been able to physically do a lot at all. But say give these like a 4-5 minute spectacle type match where Andre the Giant puts over the young guy. That could have been a real passing the torch moment, couldn't it, really? Just imagine what that would have done for the Undertaker's credibility to get a win over someone like Andre that early in his career. I mean, it is one of those dream matches, and I imagine people play it on video games all the time and stuff like that. And people used to play it with the action figures and stuff like that. But it would have been cool. It would have been a real spectacle more than anything. Coming in number 4, we're going to go a little bit different this time. We're not going to do a singles match. We're going to do a triple threat match. And this is a match that happened, but it was never televised. And that pisses me off to this day. And that is Undertaker versus Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels in a triple threat match. Now, I don't know if I've ever told anybody this, but if I was ever to do a list of dream triple threat matches, this would in fact be my number 1, because it's the 3 biggest stars from like my early childhood and the new generation era. So you think of WWF from 92 to 97, these are the 3 guys that immediately come to mind before Steve Austin blew up and became a megastar. So during those dark times of the company where the company was not doing well and struggling, these were the 3 guys And yeah, I suppose you could put Diesel and Razor in there as well, but I think these three guys in particular are the three men that really helped hold the WWF together and really helped the company stay afloat during this time. Um, Now, like I say, remember the Madison Square Garden Raw, September 22nd, 1997? What a lot of people don't know is on that show, in a dark match, I think it was either after the show or before the show, there was a triple threat match between Undertaker, Shawn, and Bret Hart. And obviously, being a dark match, it wasn't televised, but as we've seen over the last several years, with WWE releasing a lot of dark matches in the hidden gem section of the network and stuff like that, the WWE's got to have this match on tape. They have to. They absolutely have to. I'm 100% convinced that they do have this match on tape. So if you're listening, people in WWE, release that match, you cowards. I mean, stop putting me out. Let me see this match right now. Now, the unfortunate thing though is triple threat did not really become a thing in WWF until 1997. So picking a time frame for this match to work as far as a televised match would have been difficult. I feel because obviously they did triple threat matches, then Bret was going to Survivor Series. It never came back, obviously. So, what would be a realistic time frame for this match to happen? I mean, this could have main event at SummerSlam 1997, I suppose, but I feel like the great story was in Shawn being the referee. Then maybe you could have done it one night only and Dave, you could have wrestled somebody else. I mean, who that somebody else is, I don't know, but this match could have worked for one night only, perhaps. Maybe, like, I don't know, Davey could have wrestled someone like Owen or something like that, or Mankind or Vader or something like that. Maybe, yeah, Davey and Vader could have been the main event, maybe. Just putting that thought out there. Or maybe you could have had Davey versus Owen in like an exhibition type match. Or maybe In Your House Ground Zero for the WWF title. You could have had Bret defending against Taker and Shawn. Then maybe you could have, or the big one, maybe you could have done this as Survivor Series 1997 instead of Bret versus Shawn. Maybe you could have did the thing, because that Hell in a Cell match was the number one contendership, wasn't it? So then you could have had Commissioner Slaughter saying how Undertaker was screwed out that match. So if Shawn thinks he's going to get away with it, he's not. Undertaker is going to be put in the match as well. It's going to be a triple threat match for the WWF title. Because if you do it that way, then maybe the whole Montreal screwjob could have been avoided completely. Because I feel like Bret would have done the job for the Undertaker if Vince had pressed him on that. So maybe you could have done it that way. So if it was a 1-fall and Bret didn't want to lose, you could have had either Shawn or Taker pin each other, or you could have done the alternative route of Bret being pinned by the Undertaker. Then Taker and Shawn. Taker could have dropped the belt back to Shawn at Royal Rumble 1998. Then you could have got the Shawn and Austin, like what was the long-term plan at the time. But yeah, honestly, I feel like this could have been one of the greatest triple threat matches of all time. I really do. Could it have been better than Shawn, Triple H, and Benoit? Maybe. I feel like this match would have been amazing though. In a year of 1997 when we had so many amazing matches, this one could have been right up there with them. And like I say, I'm desperately want to see the match that they actually did have, which they didn't release, which is just unfortunate. But then maybe in an alternative timeline, maybe WWF does this triple threat craze earlier, and we could have got this match in late 1996 or maybe very early 1997. That could have been interesting. But either way, I wish we had a televised version of this match. Because I think along with this and Austin versus Rock versus Triple H, these are the two greatest triple threat matches that we never got, and I would really, really want to see at some point. Coming in number 3, The Undertaker versus Eddie Guerrero. Was this a feud that got away or what? I mean, apparently this did happen on a couple of house shows during the SmackDown era, but never a one-on-one televised match between these two. And that is a massive, massive shame. And I am convinced that if Eddie had lived on past 2005, we would have got it eventually, because you just feel it's an obvious one to do, right? I mean, this could have definitely happened in 2006 or 2007, but of course, obviously, Eddie died in November 2005. So it never happened. Now, the closest we ever got to this one, really, was at Armageddon 2004 in that Fatal 4 with JBL, Booker T, Eddie Guerrero, and The Undertaker. There was a point in the match where both JBL and Booker T were down, and then Eddie and The Undertaker got into a confrontation. They had a little mini match for a few minutes, and it was easily the most exciting part of that match. That was just so electrifying, and just a small sample of what we could have got. I mean, and I feel like this feud would have been amazing as well. Because let's face it, both guys were on SmackDown together from 2002 to 2005. Because they both jumped to SmackDown at around the same time. Now, I think Eddie's early WWF run, I don't think it would have made sense. Because I think back in like 2000, 2001, I don't think Eddie was quite on that level where he could have had a believable feud with The Undertaker at that point. But from 2002 onwards, I think absolutely. I mean, they were both on the same brand at the same time, but they were both babyface and both did other things. Then it's always a wonder if Eddie Guerrero had stayed WWE champion, if things had worked out a little bit differently. Could we have got Eddie versus The Undertaker for SummerSlam 2004? I mean, that could have been, yeah, that would have been a great match for SummerSlam 04, I think, hypothetically. Eddie and The Undertaker. Then, of course, 2005 rolls around. Eddie does the heel turn of Ray. And then, obviously, Undertaker was feuding with Orton at the time, and they missed that opportunity as well. Then, like I said, Eddie Guerrero passed away, and we never got it. But I am utterly convinced that we would have got it in 2006. Now, I just feel like this match would have been awesome. Because I feel like if Eddie Guerrero's size and ability, he would have obviously been the smaller guy in stature and all that. He would have took a lot of amazing. He would have made Undertaker's offense look devastating. I feel like he would have kept up with the Undertaker. Could have had a great 15, 20-minute match between the two. He could have had, especially if Eddie was a heel, and Eddie could have been like the lie cheat. Eddie could have been taking all these shortcuts to try and get an advantage over the Undertaker and all that, and then the Undertaker could have came back to win. So if this match had happened at some point 04, 05, I think this match would have been tremendous. I think it had the potential to be one of the best matches the Undertaker ever had. I think Eddie would have had so much fun messing with the Undertaker in the build-up. Because I think the storyline itself could have been epic as well. I mean, I really, really do. I mean, someone recently told me that they heard there was a plan if Eddie hadn't have died, that Eddie and Undertaker were going to start feuding after Survivor Series and have the first match at Armageddon. If that's true, that would have been really, really good. But yeah, I honestly feel like this would have been a great match. Up there with the Undertaker's best ever matches. And it's just one of those rivalries that we never ever got. And it's just a crying shame, isn't it, really? Just this match. Yeah, like I said, if you watch the Armageddon 04 match, when Undertaker and Eddie Guerrero hooked up in that match, I feel like fans were so excited for it. And it's just a small little snippet, small little sample of what we could have got. Coming at number 2, and this is one we're going to have to explain because this match did happen. This match even happened at WrestleMania. But for me, The Undertaker versus John Cena in a huge WrestleMania showdown when John Cena was the face of the company and when the streak was alive. So Cena versus Taker happened first in 2003, back when John Cena was the up-and-coming rapper and Undertaker was still the American Badass. Then just 03 and a couple of SmackDowns around that time as well. And then they actually had a gem of a match on SmackDown in 2004, but it was just a random one-off pay-per-view match. And then, yeah. But at that time, of course, Cena wasn't the face of the company. Cena was still trying to find himself, and he wasn't quite there as a worker yet. So the matches he had back then were good, but they weren't great. And then, many, many years later, WrestleMania 34, Cena versus Undertaker finally happened on a WrestleMania, no less, in New Orleans, and the match was a squash match. It was Undertaker's first match since losing to Roman Reigns the prior year, when everyone thought he was going to retire, but he didn't. But this was Undertaker's comeback match against John Cena, and it was a 5-minute squash, which indicated to me that it was what it was. They didn't have faith in the Undertaker at that point. Now, have a classic Undertaker match. And yeah, I think this is a classic example of a dream match happening too late. I mean, if you can think of a perfect example in history, if a dream match is happening way too late, well, besides Undertaker versus Goldberg, but we don't need to get into that one. Yeah, this is definitely an example of it happening too late. But for me, one of the biggest WrestleMania matches to never happen is back when the streak was a thing, back when the streak was at its peak of its powers. I mean, because at one point it was like, okay, what's the world title match at WrestleMania this year? Okay, cool. Okay, what's a streak match this year? So they kind of went hand in hand, and many times I felt like the Undertaker streak match felt way more important than whatever the WWE title match was at that year's WrestleMania. I mean, the streak became that big over time that when you were looking forward to WrestleMania every year, it was like, okay, what's the WWE title match going to be? Then it was like, okay, who's the Undertaker going to wrestle for the streak this year? You just feel like, I think from any time from WrestleMania 23 to WrestleMania 30, I think any of those WrestleManias you could have done Undertaker versus John Cena with didn't need a WWE title. It was just the streak on the line. Now, for me, if I had to pick one, stick my neck on the line and pick one, I think the perfect one would have been WrestleMania 30, the one in yours. Ironically, the one where the streak died. Because you look at those 23, okay, Undertaker, Batista, Cena versus Shawn, okay, those made sense to be the matches. Then 24, you had Taker versus Edge, which I think I would have rather seen. Then obviously 25 to 28 was the Undertaker, Triple H, Shawn Michaels saga. You could have done a 29 because let's face it, Cena versus Rock wasn't that necessary. So maybe you could have done Cena versus Taker at 29. But I feel like for me the perfect time would have been 30. I mean, for me, if you'd done Lesnar at 29 and then Cena at 30, because for 29 you could have also done Cena versus Punk versus The Rock as the main event. And who knows, maybe I'll rebook WrestleMania 29 at some point in the future. That could be on the agenda, who knows. But I feel like, because at the time, at the height of Super Cena, when John Cena was the face of the company and all that, and the face of the Undertaker at WrestleMania, that would have been a must. Because I just feel like it's probably the one time in the later years of the streak where fans could sit there and believably think the streak had a chance of ending. Because let's face it, even when the streak did end at the hands of Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30, I don't think there's a single person that predicted that. I think, like me, all of us just assumed the Undertaker was going over unless it didn't really have a realistic chance of breaking the streak. And that's ultimately why it was so shocking when the streak did end. But I feel like with Cena obviously being built up as Superman John Cena and all that stuff, where hustle, loyalty, respect, never give up, yeah, face of the company, I feel like Cena was probably the one guy in the roster where you're looking thinking, this could be the guy to end the streak because you think, this is probably the one guy that Vince would think, okay, this is a guy I want to give the streak to, John Cena. So you've got these two super strong characters, Cena, Undertaker, in a match where, in the match would be genuine doubt who would win and who would lose the match. And I just feel like the drama, I think, especially nowadays, we've got no crowds and that, so in a rabid WrestleMania crowd for the die-hard wrestling fans, oh my god, the atmosphere would have been to die for. To absolute die for, surely. Oh my god. I feel like the drama for this one would have been absolutely incredible. I mean, just imagine the near falls. Just imagine, like, Cena hitting the AA and everyone thinking, like, oh my god, the streak's over. And then the Undertaker kicking out. And then the Undertaker hitting Cena with his tombstone. Then John Cena kicking out. Then you could have either guy get a big dramatic SGF for John Cena, where it looks like the Undertaker's will he give up? Will he give up? Will he give up? He finally fights to the ropes. Then we get John Cena in that Hell's Gate. Could this be the first time that Mr. Never Give Up gives up and taps out? Then Cena doesn't. Then you have another electrifying exchange. Then the Undertaker can hit either a second or a third tombstone and get the win over John Cena. But I honestly think, like, looking at the streak, there's been so many great matches in the streak, a few stinkers as well, but a lot of great matches. Now, as far as a match, this is probably one of the best matches that never ever happened in the streak. Because let's face it, when they did wrestle at WrestleMania 34, it was all smoke and mirrors. Because at that time, Cena was no longer the face of the company. He was out the door. The streak had already ended. Taker had already had 2 WrestleMania losses. And obviously at that point, Undertaker was not the same man anymore by the time he wrestled John Cena. So that match was just, it was what it was. It was a 5-minute squash match, wasn't it, really? That's what it was. It wasn't anything. But if he did this as Super Cena in his prime and Undertaker with the streak, this would have been absolutely epic. That I am convinced of. Now, comes in number, of course. I mean, I'm pretty sure nearly everyone watching this video could have predicted what number 1 was going to be. And it's the Undertaker Dream Match. It's ultimately going to be the Undertaker Dream Match that got away. And that's the Undertaker versus Sting in a huge WrestleMania showdown. Now, Taker Sting, there's a few dream matches in wrestling that never happened. I mean, I always think of Hogan versus Austin versus Goldberg, and right up there with those is the Undertaker versus Sting. Now, of all the big names in wrestling since the Undertaker came onto the scene, there's one guy never wrestled, and that was Sting. Now, even though the match was absolute garbage, the Super Showdown match of Goldberg was one of those legends from Undertaker's era that he never wrestled. Now, granted, the match was absolutely garbage, but it ticked Goldberg off the Undertaker's bucket list of people he never got to work with. And there was one guy left. And realistically, WWE really had one clear-cut opportunity to do it, and they never did it. So, we could do this in 2 ways. We could talk about fantasy and then what would be the best time to do it in reality. So, I think there's a few times it would have been awesome. I even think probably not as great as it would be later on, but I even think Surfer Sting versus Deadman Undertaker, like maybe Grey or Purple Glove Undertaker, would have been pretty cool. See if they did this in 91, 92. Obviously the match wouldn't be all that good, but I think as a feud would have been really good. I think for me personally, if we're talking pure fantasy, obviously I think the best time to do this match would have been the late 90s, so 97, 98, even 99 really. So obviously Crow Sting versus a Lord of Darkness Undertaker. I feel like late 1997, 1998 would have been the absolute best time to do this match. I mean, I really do think this would have been pretty awesome. Even Ministry Undertaker versus Sting in 1999. I mean, maybe it wouldn't be great as it would be in 97 and 98, but I still think this would really be a badass feud, because obviously at the time, this was at the time, the height of the Monday Night Wars, where nearly everyone had jumped ship at some point, but Sting was like WCW's constant, Undertaker was WWF's constant, and it just would have been the ultimate WWF versus WCW showdown. Like, obviously, if there was a fantasy WWF versus WCW show in the 1990s, I mean, Undertaker versus Sting along with Austin versus Goldberg. If I had the power to get a magic wand and make 2 matches from the Monday Night Wars happen, it would definitely be Austin Goldberg, and the other would definitely be the Undertaker versus Sting. But then after 2001, of course, Sting doesn't go to WWE. Everybody else gets there at one time or another. I mean, the NWO come in, Ric Flair come in, Scott Steiner comes in, even Goldberg comes in 2003, but as far as WCW icons, Sting never does it. And instead, becomes a member of the TNA roster in 2005 and pretty much stays there. Now, I believe he stayed there until 2013. Maybe it was early 2014, I'm not sure. So maybe hypothetically, another really cool time to do it would have been, say, what if in late 2005 Sting didn't sign with TNA? He signed to have a 1 or 2 year run in WWE, and then what if he came in late 2005 and him and Undertaker built up to a big match at WrestleMania 22? I mean, both guys are a little bit older at that point, Sting in particular, but I feel like in the in the mid to late 2000s, Undertaker had a hell of a career revival and was, especially in 07, 08 and 09, was having some of the best years of his career in his 40s. And I feel like Sting was at least good in that era, good enough to have a good match. But then there was a time it could have realistically happened, but it didn't. And that's in 2011. In 2011, Sting's TNA contract expired now. I know, hands up, how many people remember the 2/21/11 promos that were airing around this time of the guy in the trench coat? And I remember vividly the hype amongst IWC was so mad for this. I mean, I think so many people in IWC were convinced this was going to be for Sting. This was promos for Sting coming in. Sting was going to show up and he's going to challenge The Undertaker for a dream match at WrestleMania. Because remember also, WrestleMania 27 was in Atlanta. And of course, Atlanta, was WCW's home for many, many years. So, and I always think, and then Sting, I guess Sting's a guy that was loyal to a fault. He stayed at WCW for all those years, missed out on a run with WWF in the 1990s. And even when he was with TNA, I think he showed a lot of surprise loyalty to those guys. He stayed with TNA, and then, then to his horror, the whole Jeff Hardy thing happened. And I just think, what if Sting had signed on for a year or two, maybe a year, 2-year run of WWE from 2011. Maybe he could have then wrapped it up in 2013, 2014, something like that. But what if he came in? What if on 2/21/11 it was Sting making his debut, and then The Undertaker came out? Then it was, because you remember the silent stare down between Triple H and The Undertaker, where they never said a word to each other, but they looked at the WrestleMania sign, and that pretty much said everything. So what if that was Sting? And then what if Sting and The Undertaker had that match at WrestleMania 27? Because I think at that point, this was one of the last few times where The Undertaker was in really good shape. I mean, I think it was one of the last, because I think it was after, pretty much, I think the two Triple H matches were great, then the Punk match was excellent. Then obviously the Brock match happened, and that was what it was. And I think after that, he just wasn't in shape anymore. But so I think this would have been more great spectacle and great match. But I do feel like both guys had enough in the tank in 2011 to have a respectable match. I don't think they would have embarrassed themselves. I think they would have had an entertaining enough match. But then, Survivor Series 2014, Sting makes his WWE debut. So now, after all these years, you've got Sting, you've got The Undertaker under contract to the same company at the same time. WrestleMania 31's around the corner. Undertaker's first match post-streak. You gotta do Undertaker versus Sting for WrestleMania 31, right? Of course not. Of course we're not going to do that, because we've got Triple H, and Triple H is Vince's son-in-law. And if anyone's going to get Sting first, it's got to be the almighty Triple H. And we've just got to do this Undertaker Bray Wyatt match, because the fans were so invested and so interested in that match. Right, wrong. And then after that, of course, okay, you think, okay, maybe do it next year in Dallas at WrestleMania 32. But unfortunately, Sting got the career-ending injury in the match of Seth Rollins at Night of Champions. And then Undertaker and Sting could never happen after that. Sting was never clear to compete again in WWE. Then, of course, after that, as the years wore on, Undertaker's body just deteriorated. And it's just sad. It really is sad. I mean, I don't want to harp on it too much because I have ranted about it before, but WrestleMania 31 was the biggest opportunity, well, the only real opportunity to do this match, really, and they never did it. And that just sucks. That genuinely sucks. Because would this have been a fantastic match? Probably not. But I just feel like the spectacle of seeing these two iconic characters having this dream match that everyone wanted to see for years. I mean, it didn't even have to be, it could have been 10, 12 minutes long. It didn't have to be a long match. It could have just both hit the best moves, hit the signature moves, do a few cool spots, and that would be it. I think the fans would have been totally satisfied with it, in my opinion. And yeah, it's obviously it's that dream match that got away, wasn't it? Just so disappointing. And I've heard And I did have a horrible suspicion that WWE would try and book this in Saudi Arabia, but if the Undertaker's done now for good, and let's just take his word on that and say that he is done, that's not going to happen now. But then I heard another suggestion with the whole cinematic craze match that happened. Could this match ever happen in a cinematic type way with like AJ Styles and the Undertaker, where they could do the match, completely edit the shit out of it, and then make it look presentable? I think that's the only way this match could ever realistically happen now. But to be honest, I don't really want to see it that way, because I feel like it would be a bastardized version of the match. It would be pretty much what it is, hiding both guys' limitations and all that. And yeah, like I say, shame it never happened. And that's a wrap, guys. So hope you like this video. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more, put them in the comment section below of people you'd like to see, and I'll definitely consider it, doing it every now and then. I don't want to do it like every week or something, but I think that's definitely something I'd like to consider doing in the future. And just keep an eye out for the channel. And until next time, guys, peace.